There it is, live. Balvino, we are live right now. I always like to show the backside of producing politics of success or timelines of success. So this is the back supporting element here. So we're actually live. People can actually see us worldwide right now.
Oh,
It's funny where people tune in from.
that's amazing.
Overseas, Middle East.
Technology, the places where it's been and where it's going. It's
I've got
amazing.
about 2,000 people who have this system available to them if they want to watch it, who subscribe.
That's great.
So if you subscribe to this channel, it pings, it says it's live.
Wonderful.
So a few people will come up, but really it's designed for the backside. Now what we're going to do is we're going to record Politics of Success. So I'm ready to start right now.
Go ahead.
Balvino, welcome to Politics of Success.
My pleasure to be here.
Known you a long time. We're both Chair 3.
Yes, we are in the Modesto City Council.
And Modesto City Council many moons ago, and our kids are like in high school together, and now they're all grown up.
Yes, and married and having children.
Well, you've been doing political consulting since I've known you, 20, 30 years, something like that.
It's about 30 years.
It's a long time. And I know you specialize in mail, had your mail house, and you still are very active and have your own consulting agency as well as specialize in the mail production and distribution. So tell us a little bit more about yourself and your specialties.
Well, my specialty really is in the area of targeting database management. And that's where I originally started. I got my degree at the University of Utah, and also at UCLA I got my naval science degree. But my specialty was marketing and business management. And I got into the politicking, just randomly by luck. One time I had a friend who was running for office called me and says, Balvino, I'm running for office, but I don't know how to get to the voters. And I said, well, I have some database experience. Let me work on it. And so we worked together, and we ended up winning by a substantial margin. And he started word of mouth talking to other people, and pretty soon I was getting requests from different candidates to do their targeting in their mail, and from there it just kind of grew into designing mail. I created a mail house. I went into printing. I went into all the aspects of political mail, as far as from creation to design on to actually just sending it out. So we had a complete mail house at one time where we could, within 24 hours, we could get a piece out. Right. From design all the way to the post office, which in this day and time you needed that.
That's amazing, 24 hours. I remember I did a piece in 7 days, but you reviewed it and worked on it with me a little bit. We were experimenting. Yeah. That was between deployments.
Yes.
And actually did pretty well with that piece. Pulled 40% out of 7 people in some counties. So, but that was just a mail piece. That was just to test a mail piece, nothing else, no signs.
And that's about average, 7 days from design to production.
I thought that was kind of fast.
Yes, it was.
But that's pretty good turnover. So a couple of things. You have a timeline of success episode, which I will put in the notes to reference back. It came up about last week, but you can go back and get more detail about yourself and your background. It starts out when you're in the Navy and evolves up and all the challenges. But tonight, before we go into the nuts and bolts of mail and message, tell us what makes a good candidate.
To me, what makes a good candidate is passion, the desire to serve, and the desire to be in front of people, the desire to tackle issues head on, a decision maker, someone that doesn't wave back and forth, someone that has charisma and can talk to all kinds of people, down from the ones that are on the street all the way up to the ones that are in high office or corporate heads. You need to be flexible. You need to not be afraid to walk into a neighborhood where there's bulldogs and so forth, and you need to just be able to approach people. You need to look them in the eye, and you need to be believable.
Right, I agree. And this area has actually produced some pretty good candidates along the way.
Yes, it has.
Some have been good candidates and got in trouble, who had the right characteristics, who could relate to the common person and still work at the higher levels. But for example, Gary Condit, he was actually pretty good with his people, and I think his staff was excellent.
Yes. No, it happens. The office, when it's amazing how when you get in office, all of a sudden a lot of doors open for you. People treat you differently. They want to buy you lunch, buy you breakfast. They want
Right.
to, and so forth. And once you get in there, you get kind of accustomed to that, to being treated royalty, like
Yeah.
royalty, and so it gets to your head. And sometimes
Right.
candidates let it get to their heads, and they forget that what they're there for, and that is to serve the people.
And if they do let it get to their head, eventually they'll be voted out of office.
They
It
will,
happens.
because it
Something
catches
happens.
up to you. I mean,
Yeah.
when you're not loyal to your constituents, it comes out, and that's one thing your voters and your constituents demand, and that's loyalty, honesty, and integrity.
Right. I've worked on many kitchen cabinets, being sort of as advisors to the candidate. And one thing that I always would say is, when you get elected, you're going to have all sorts of new friends. Just remember that. Remember who your original friends were and your new friends, because your old friends will still be there when you get out of office.
That's true. And then when you get out of office, it's like Bill who or Balvino who, and the doors are no longer open, and opportunities that were once there are gone. And because people just
Yeah.
have a short vision, they treat you nicely when they need you. When they don't need you, you're off to the wayside.
One thing I will modify that. When I was in office, I did make a few new friends that I still have. A
Yeah,
few,
no,
not
you
not a
do,
lot,
you do,
but
but generally speaking, the ones that are in need of something are the
yeah.
ones that leave you quickly.
One thing I always remember about office, which was the frustrating part, is people were either asking you for something or mad at you.
Right.
Very seldom did somebody say "great job."
Yeah, it's
Sometimes they did, but very seldom.
true.
So a new candidate, you want one with passion, who cares. And I would say the other qualification down the road, if you want to stay in office, is just don't forget where you came from.
That's correct. That's very
So
true.
that's very good. So tell us a little bit more about political mail, and what is it, first of all, and how do you use it?
Okay.
Some people say it's old school.
No, it's not old school. Actually, political mail is more effective now than ever. If you start to look at the new technologies and things, for example, the post office. The post office is changing, and that technology is changing, and you no longer see the volume of mail that you used to at one time. Right now, all the people are paying their bills on the internet with bill pay, and you see very little first class mail. Well, in actuality, what that does is that makes it better for political mail, because you have less mail going into the stream, which if you have good mail, it's going to get visible, and you're only competing with a lot of the uh, uh, mail houses or that are sending out junk mail.
Right.
And people will throw out junk mail, but if it's good mail, they'll look at it.
There's some quality mail coming through now too. I would say that Costco's little flyer that comes out,
Yes,
people like that.
yeah, they like those
It's
coupons
very
in
targeted.
there.
It's very good mail,
Mhm.
and it ties in. And there's a lot less mail. That's very very true.
Yeah, and then you look at also at one time television was a real hot issue of contacting candidates. That's also changing, because now with the DVRs and stuff, people are going in and they're skipping all of the
Right.
commercials, and so there's less time that you're able to get there. And also, as you get closer to the election, it's very difficult to get on television, and it's extremely expensive.
Right. The other thing too is we're in Central Valley here, and
Hmm.
Sacramento is the hub, and a
Hmm.
little bit of Bay Area, but mostly
Right.
Sacramento. And you're reaching from Redding all the way down to Fresno, almost not quite to Fresno, but it's too wide of an area to cover for a candidate, and very expensive.
It is, and that's why direct mail is such a good tool. They call direct mail the Stalinist bomber of politics, and that's because what is happening is direct mail can go directly to the people that are going to
Right.
vote. I just read something the other day that said that the post office people actually pick up and look at 81% of their mail. That's pretty high
Right. No, I
numbers.
know it's true. The other thing too about mail is, when you send it out, who do you send it out to, and does it make a difference on the type of campaign that you're targeting and working?
Yes, it does. It makes a real big difference. The objective when you have a political campaign is to keep your costs down, and to reach as many high propensity voters as possible. And direct mail allows you to do that. With direct mail, you say, for example, let's just say in Stanislaus County here, I can give you some statistics. The statistics work like this: there's over 500,000 people in the area, but of that, there's probably only about 215,000 that are actual registered voters. And of those 215,000, there's actually only about 15 to 20,000 that vote regularly. So what that means is less than 10% of the actual, voters are your target market, and so that's why it's important to zoom in on that.
So 15 to 20,000 high propensity voters, right? And you get
Yes.
you get the mail to the high propensity voters. They're going to tell their friends who
Right.
vote secondary, and their kids
Well,
who may not vote as often.
Well, you look at this last election. It was a really low turnout election. It was a Stanislaus County election. It was like 26%. And I did some statistics on those, and probably on those 26% that voted, about 95% of them were the ones that vote all the time. So there was just a very small number that kind of kicked in, and these are usually new people that register for their first time.
Was that a countywide election?
It was a countywide, and it was a very low turnout, but that's why it's so important to target and zoom in on those voters.
So on a countywide election, let's look at a county and a city election. Those
Sure.
are really the bread and butter.
Mm-hmm.
For a countywide election, 500,000 people, which, believe it or not, where I am in Nevada, Waso is the same size, 500,000, and the city is 200,000, almost exactly like Modesto. The difference is we don't have local we have local TV, which you really don't have here. So that many, how many pieces of mail did you have to get out, and how often should you send out mail, and when should you send out mail?
Well, what you want to do when you send out mail, the first thing is you select your target market, and then before you just send to that target market, then you got to go in there and you need to household the data, because that way it reduces the number of pieces that you actually send. So you're only sending to one per
household. So how do you label it if you have two voters in a household?
Well, there's different ways. I normally label it, for example, the Irizarry family, or the Conrad family, and that usually works.
Right, that makes sense. And you set it up all. You sort it, you bring it down, and then you just.
And that way, anyone that picks it up in the family is, it applying to them.
So how many pieces do you send out at a time, and when do you send them out?
When you send, the timing is extremely important, and it depends on the election. Elections, like in California and in our valley, have changed dramatically. Now 80% of the voters are voting absentee, which means that it totally changes the dynamics of an election. You're no longer running an election in November, but you're actually running two elections. You're running one that starts on October 1st, and then you're running one toward the end of November. So, but your main focus is on your absentee voters.
Right, the absentee. You got to get it out early then.
That's
so
correct.
when the ballot material drops, ideally the same day, you want a piece of mail going.
Yes, we're tracking the voters now, because we have a means of knowing which ones are turning in their ballots. So on a daily basis, we keep records of how many have turned out and which ones have actually turned them out. So we can actually go in there and pull them out of the database. So it's reducing our database as we go along.
So how do you do that? Do you have to go down to the county recorder's office, and do they give you that information?
The information, you can get it, and we get it online, and so we get it directly. And what they do is each day they input, and they keep a record of everyone that has turned in their ballot, and usually they do it in the morning, and in late afternoon they send it out. If you request it, you have to pay for it. But
right, I was going to say the mail house has to pay for that information.
Yes,
and then they can use it for any candidates they're representing, right?
That's correct.
So that's why you have to use a consolidated source. That makes it a lot easier too, and that's interesting. So you know exactly who's voted and who hasn't voted.
Yes.
So do you find that when people get their absentees, it's about 30 days out, How soon do they actually vote once they get them?
Actually, it's interesting how they do that. First off, you always get a very small number that are committed. As soon as they get their ballot, they fill it out, they send it in. But in actuality, the majority of people will hold on to their ballot for a while, and it depends on the kind of election. If it's a complex, a lot of candidates, a lot of issues, they hold it to the very end. It's usually between 15 and 25 days later when you start getting big surges of the mail.
Right. So 20, that's for the last 5 days.
Yeah, a lot of
Last
those
5 days.
get,
Wow.
get in the last few weeks, and that's why it's important to track them. If you notice that there are a lot of people are voting quickly, then it means that you should have had your message out earlier, and it also means that your universe is reducing, and that uh, you have to be selective on the mail you send out. But if it's one of those cases where they're holding on, you almost have to reach a point where you treat absentee voters like you would poll voters,
Right.
and you have to send them additional mail.
My wife usually votes absentee, and I vote at the polls. So we get a mix. We sort of get a mix over the years. But she always has a tendency to wait to the last week. And in fact, I've seen her actually drop it down at the county recorder's office.
Yeah,
She's waiting. She waits till the
you're
end.
seeing a lot of that.
A lot come in. But yeah, that's just like voting at the end of the day. It's most people. I would say most people vote the last 10 days.
Yeah, they do. And what that tells you is that it's changing, because when you don't have a lot of poll voters, it means that the ballot box and the political mail and so forth is even more important.
Right, very much so. So on the mail that goes out, let's say like 500,000 people here, you say 210,000 registered, and then 20,000 for actually high propensity voters.
Right.
How many mail pieces do you send out for a countywide election?
Well, for a countywide election, what you normally do, or
Per
what
cycle.
we do, is you look at there's a lot of things that go into it. First, you've got to look at your particular election. You got to look at the issues of the election. You've got to look at what's important, and then you zoom in, because as you start creating your mail piece, you need to know who it's going to. If it's going to women, if it's going to an ethnic group, if it's going to
Right.
A party, so that it all makes a difference, and it changes your statistical numbers. We usually like to initially start out. You use a wide net initially, and you kind of zoom in. So when you first start out, for example, one of the first pieces that normally goes out is an intro piece, which introduces the candidate. This is who I am, and this is what I'm going to do, and these are my issues, and these are the people that are supporting me, type thing. So that goes out. So you send that out to a little wider group, maybe the 3 out of 4s, or the 2 out of 4s.
The very first piece that hits everybody.
The first pieces, because you want to create a buzz. You want people to start talking about the candidate, and so you start.
It's the happy piece we call it.
Yeah, it's the happy piece.
Nothing negative, all happy.
Right. Yes.
Nothing partisan per se, unless it's a primary, of course.
Right, and this is where like when you did yours had a military, happy picture, and you in uniform, that kind of thing, and that's how you do it, and so that goes out to a little wider group, and then as you get closer, for example, usually on a 30 days before the election, they have to start sending out the absentee ballots. So normally, for example, in the November election, around the 5th, 6th, the ballots are starting to go out. So you want to back your pieces up. So you want to send something happy and say September, and then you want to
early
send it out early, and then say mid-September you want to have something, and then if you're really targeting the absentees, then you hit them again soon when they go out, and then you hit them again.
Right. I would say also, but you're talking a full-blown funded campaign in that case.
Right.
And by the way, put 90% of your money into mail, 5% into your website, but your mail still, and a few signs.
Yeah.
Those are the three elements that you have.
You use your mail to also advertise your website, and
you push them to.
Right. Yeah, you push them to your website.
In the last campaign, just a side note, the last campaign over in Nevada, I was watching the campaigns, and I had access to the websites, how many visits they were getting a day. Mm. And you'd be surprised at how few people were actually going to the websites, unless you stuck out a piece of mail. You could tell if you stuck out a piece of mail, it spiked. But I mean, we're talking in a city of 200,000, only 30, 40 people a day, 30 days out, going to a website of a top candidate. But once the mail goes out, then they'll have maybe 300 or 400 people.
Well, you've got to realize
Thousand
that more than 52% of the people, of the compulsive voters that vote all the time, are still 45 years and above, and
Right.
many of them are not used to. They're the baby boomers. They're not accustomed to the high technology nowadays. In the future, that may change, but for now, still mail is still an important element there.
I watched a lot of candidates, and some candidates spent way too much money for their website. You don't have to have a fancy website. You just need your name, your platform, what you stand for, and maybe a donate tab.
Right.
And that's not expensive. You shouldn't be paying more than $20 or $30 a month or something like that in a campaign.
Yeah.
Even and to set it up, maybe $100.
Yeah, well, your campaign is kind of it's like that intro piece. It's where it shows the candidate, shows his endorsements, shows his
Or you
activities.
can add the endorsements.
Right. You've got to remember that this is all about going after the selected, unique group of people that are going to show up at the poll. And anytime you're using a shotgun approach like the web page and stuff, you might be getting a lot of hits, but maybe just a few of those are actual voters that are gonna vote.
No, the mail. I'm really 100% sold on mail. So now we've got the happy piece out early, and maybe another piece out with the publication when the county recorder sends out the basic packet of voting material in the absentee ballot. What type of mail pieces? Now we start defining different kind of mail pieces.
Right.
What happens now with a mail piece?
Well, as you progress, you're going for more from a biography, a happy piece. Then you're going into issues, really identifying the issues, and you need to target the issues to make sure that when your piece goes out, it resonates with the people. It creates excitement. It creates action. So you're going to issues, and then from issues, as you get closer to the election, then you're looking at comparison pieces. You need to
comparison is good. It's better than a quote unquote hit piece.
Right, and you need to, there's a lot of people on the fence as closer, and they're procrastinators like everyone else, and so as you move closer, then your pieces have to be stronger and more compelling and more unique, and more direct to the point.
Right, direct and targeted on the issues. So a comparison piece. Go into more detail. What do you put on a comparison piece?
Well, a comparison piece, basically on a comparison piece, you're trying to make one of the candidates look a lot better than the other, and so normally on those pieces, if when you see them, you see a really bad picture of your opponent, and you see a shining, glowing, great picture of you, and then it starts going down the list of in different areas, specifically targeted to the voters that you're going to send to, whether it's a party or and so forth.
You can target those to registration to different parties.
Right.
Different households.
There's all kinds of ways of targeting. The number one criteria is voting history. And after that, it depends if it's a party, your gender, you're going into age, you're going into different elements.
What is the typical age of a voter?
Typical age of your voters is normally between 40 and 70.
Because once they start voting, they continue to vote along the way.
There's the compulsive. We call them compulsive voters. and when you say compulsive, because it's one of those. Compulsive. It's one of those rain, shine. It doesn't matter. They will get to the poll, even if they have to run in the rain or snow, whatever. They will get there.
My wife was telling me about something she saw in the polls last cycle a couple months ago when we had elections, and there's an old couple came in with auction bottles, and they were going to vote.
Yeah.
And he said it was a great example of people dedicated and committed to vote.
It's
at the polls.
That's right.
Some people still like to vote at the polls. They just feel good about the polls.
Yes, they do.
But in retrospect, something could happen where you can't vote. So it's the absentee is a unique beast.
Bill, we've kind of been talking a little general on the polls. Let's maybe let the readers kind of know kind of the phases that they have to go through on a mail piece. Maybe we
Yep.
can, if you
Okay.
don't
Tell
mind.
us about it.
Okay. First off, when you have a mail piece, the most important element of it is your original planning stage. It's the stage where it's your conception. This is where you decide that you're going to send out a piece. You start deciding why you're sending out, to whom you're sending out, what is your purpose of sending it out, and so this is where you start thinking about it. So you're going from concept, then you're going to design, and in the design stage, this is where you make it appealing to the voters. This is where you bring in a graphic designer and so forth. And then after you've designed the piece, you've got your idea, you design the piece, then you take it to a printer, and there's certain criteria and things that you need to do to the printer. Then from the printer, it goes over to a mail house, and the mail house is the one that has the piece from the printer and puts an address, direct impression. They sort it, they bundle it, and deliver it in such a way that it goes to the post office. At the post office, that's where you normally get it mailed. But the thing that a lot of people forget is they start in that order, and you really shouldn't. What you really should do is work backwards, and that is you should go to the post office and find out what some of their requirements are. For example, if you can have the greatest piece in the world, you can have the greatest concepts, it can be designed perfectly, it can be printed beautifully, and you walk to the post office and they look at you and they say, you can't mail this piece because it doesn't meet our requirements, our regulations. It's the wrong size, it's the wrong weight, it's not passable. And so then all of a sudden your money's gone.
Right.
Or
On the
or you
printing,
or
you got a
you
good walk piece.
yeah,
It's a lot of walking.
right, that's right. Or you have to send it out at a more expensive rate. And so the most expensive part when you start breaking down the cost of a walk piece is your postage. After your postage is your printing, and after your printing you work back to design, and then the concept. I mean, there's a cost there too, but normally so that's why I'm saying you need to think back. You need to know a little bit about your printer. You need to know about the design requirements of the piece, and so it's not an easy process.
Right.
And a lot of times you get beginners that think that they can do it all, and you yourself have designed, and I've seen some of your work, and you've
But I
done some
worked with
work.
the mail house. I worked with you in the past too,
Right,
at
and
different
so it
times.
does make a difference, and
But
so
yeah,
I think that's
what we
important to
always did,
state.
always check with the mail house. But the other thing too is we have a real estate company which does bulk mail,
Mhm.
so we're familiar with.
Right.
You can actually go and talk to the bulk mail people
Hmm.
in the
That's
usually the
correct.
back of the head areas. Now it's changed. The rules change all the time too. I know
And they
that.
do, and that's why it's important. Sometimes you get the designers that think that they know a lot, but they don't. They're good graphic people, but they don't know the concepts of what goes into a piece and so forth, and so they can have great designs,
Right.
but as far as the wording and stuff, and a lot of times the graphic people don't understand what the printing people can and can't do. For example, you can send a beautiful, glossy, nice piece over to the printer. They can design, they can send it, and they send it over to the mail house. And some mail houses are not equipped to handle shiny, glossy pieces with their equipment. And
Right.
so then you're kind of in a bind.
I've got boxes of old mail, and some of it's totally junk that doesn't
Yeah.
work. Plus, a candidate can put a piece of mail out with a wrong message
Right.
that just has something off in it that hasn't been tested, and it'll actually go against them.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I've done that. I mean, I've seen that firsthand. And even on negative pieces, you got to be real careful.
Yeah.
Why don't you explain what a negative piece is and when you mail a
Well,
negative?
the thing about a negative piece is they're very interesting, and you'll see that a lot of political consultants will use negative pieces, and there's reasons for using negative pieces. One of the main reasons is if you're going against an incumbent, you're at a big disadvantage, and it's very difficult to overturn one. And so the best way of bringing the incumbent down to a winnable level is to knock them down a couple notches. And so that's why they use negative pieces. They've actually done tests on negative pieces, and what they have found is that if you send out two pieces, one is the shiny knight of armor, great person, wonderful family picture, the whole thing. You send one of those out, and then you send one out that says that the person was seen with a young gal or something like that, and you'll have 80% of the people will focus on the negative piece, and you'll have very few people that'll actually look and pick up the other one. And so that's why you see a lot of them, because
Right.
they're effective.
And
They work.
they've got to be accurate though too.
They,
You can lose depending on how you do it. I've done it both ways where we've lost votes.
no, no, negative pieces, you have to be really, really careful when you do a negative piece. It's a lot of people just throw they'll throw anything out there hoping something will stick. Right. And so, but you have to be very careful. It has, you have to know what you're doing.
Especially this area, Central Valley. This area is brutal.
Oh, yes,
yeah, absolutely. From Sacramento down to Bakersfield's known as just real hardcore politics.
Yes, and anything can kill you. And you've seen great candidates go down on issues like taxes, on issues of bankruptcy, on issues of crimes they may have committed or something, but that'll shoot you down real quick.
I'll tell you what, a couple candidates, I won't mention names, have all those features who are in office.
Yeah,
it's surprising. It's just the way it's worked out. They've had soft elections or been blocked.
That's the interesting thing on some of those. When somebody sends out a negative piece on someone, the very worst thing that person can do is just step back and say, I'm not going to do anything. Right. This is not going to affect me. Nothing's going to happen, because they are strong and they do affect the campaign. They can swing the mood of the campaign. They can swing the momentum. So if you have a negative piece thrown at you, you have to be ready and able to react quickly.
Now most negative pieces come out Thursday, Friday before Election Day on Tuesday. You see them at the end of the campaign.
That's true, but see, the sad part about that is that that's very, very difficult to do anymore, because nowadays, because so many people are going absentee,
right, a couple weeks out,
people have their votes already in the recorder's or the registered voters office before some of these hit, and so they're not as effective as they once were when there was a high poll voter turnout.
What does a candidate do if on a Thursday or Friday a negative drops against that candidate?
Actually, a lot of candidates, especially in some of the bigger races, they're prepared. I mean, they even have their committees ready and their graphic people ready on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so that if something negative comes out, they can quickly respond to it. So. Right. Yeah, so the key is turnaround, and the key is to respond in such a way that it negates the negative piece.
I've never seen a newspaper Friday, Saturday drop. I've never seen newspapers do anything on Monday, and they never talk on election day.
They're starting to step back away from that, and so that is a way that negative pieces are you don't see as many tricky ones. I mean, you see them throughout the campaign, but not the tricky ones that kind of basically almost tell lies right at the end, right before the voters get ready to go into the booth.
Right, and that it may or may not work. One thing is, I've always liked humor within pieces at the end.
Yeah.
If you can put humor into some kind of piece where it's a soft negative.
Yeah, on piece.
That takes a lot of art, though. Whoever the consultant is, the group, the political mail folks, to be able to do something like that takes a lot of skill.
It does take skill. That's why when it comes to political mail, the stakes are high, and you should really have some good professional people around you that are effective and knowledgeable and have the experience to deal with some of these issues.
Taking a step back, when you start your campaign,
yes,
you need a photo shoot.
Yes, you do.
That's probably a lot of candidates try to cheese the photo shoot. That's one place they need to spend a little bit of money, because it does take a special skill, doesn't it, to get those shots?
Yes, it does, and it takes a professional. You want a professional shot. If you're a judge running for the office, you want to be sitting down with a gavel and with law books in the background and so forth. And if you're a business person, you want to show yourself standing there running a business. And so it's really, really important. Usually the pictures that you take stay throughout the whole campaign.
Right.
It's not
you only
one
take
of those,
them once.
Yeah, it's not one of those where they're constantly changing, because you don't have time. Once it gets hot and intensive, you don't have time.
Candidate isn't. Yeah, he needs to do those 90 days, 4 months out.
Right.
And also the kids and dog shots. Those are good too.
Yeah, no,
Kids, dogs,
you
good
know, this is
background,
the
police
family.
fire in the
These are
background.
family shots. When you're running a campaign, you want to kind of run a nice overall campaign. First, you want to lay a real good foundation. You want to show that you have a lot of support, a lot of endorsements. You want to show that you're real strong on the issues, and you want to show that you're committed. So you're showing a whole picture. You don't just, if you don't, if you just come out with a family one time and it's not part of the whole picture, it just doesn't come across. Voters are really smart. I mean, they can read through a lot of these, different tactics. So you
Right.
have to be good.
So that's good. So we've got the whole gamut. We never did find out though, in that 10 or 15,000 people countywide, how
Mhm.
many pieces of mail do you actually send out in one time? Just not all
Well,
together, but
well, and
one
what
mail,
would
the big mail.
the normal, and you need at least three pieces for to get your name out there, to get recognition, and for the voters to know you. Less than three pieces, unless you're very well known in the community, aren't effective. So that's why you will see in some of these statewide races, you will actually see seven, eight, nine, even up to 10 pieces,
That's
and they're
amazing.
and
That's a
they
lot of
all
money.
they all come in a very short period of time, and the purpose of that is to get that recognition, that name out there, that momentum for their candidate.
Hmm. So that's one candidate would send out
Yeah,
that many. That's a
yeah,
lot of
I have
pieces.
seen that many. I mean,
That's an expensive race
if you've seen the race here with Denham and some of these
for Congress.
Congress
Yeah.
and some of the state candidates, it's not unusual to see 8 to 10 pieces.
But a judge or someone running for either a county commissioner or a supervisor.
Yeah,
See, different counties. I'm saying different things now. County commissioner.
On those you see three to
Commissioners.
five,
Three.
and five is where you have a candidate that's well funded.
Right.
If you're very limited, you should at least get a couple of pieces out there.
That's one thing I tell people. Candidates have a tendency to waste a lot of money early on in a campaign. Hold it, take whatever money you have and throw it into your mail at the end.
And time it.
And time it, right.
Time it, send it to your targeted compulsive voters, and have a really good, strong message.
To your high propensity, happy mail out with absentee ballots. That's your first piece, and that's the most important. And then hopefully that'll help you raise money for your later mail down the road.
That's correct.
So we've got, let's say, a candidate for countywide send out 10, 12,000, maybe 14,000 pieces.
Well,
for the first mailer.
Yeah, usually you send around. For the first one, it's around 20,000.
20,000. So that's a lot.
That's a lot of pieces.
Threes, fours, and fives.
3 or 4s, because you're actually that number is probably coming down from maybe 35,000.
That's a lot of households. So maybe 40, 50,000 voters are actually seeing that.
That's right.
So what does that cost to send out 20,000 pieces?
Yeah, you're looking. If you started looking at an average cost, when you're looking at your design, your mail house costs, your printing costs, your postage costs, they range anywhere from 50 to 70 cents, depending on how.
So $12,000-$14,000 for that first piece of mail.
That's correct.
But that's the most important piece of mail right there in a campaign. If you can't get that out, you're probably not going to run the election.
Yeah, you need to be out there.
Get that piece out.
A lot of people put a lot of their money on signs, on bumper stickers.
Bumper stickers, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you need some signs. You don't need a lot of signs, but you need some signs. Now, I got a question. If you have between the yard sign and the big 4x8 or 4x4, what do you do if you're limited in budget? You go for yard signs, or you go for the 4x4?
I would go for the yard signs, and the reasons for the yard signs is when somebody plumps down a sign in front of the yards, that's commitment.
Right.
I mean, I have a little great story that I always tell my candidates, and it goes a little bit like this. And this was actually, I may have told it to you, with Loretta Sanchez, and this was a big congressional race in
Southern California.
That's Southern California. She was new. She was running against a very strong, very heavy finance incumbent. And one day she went to her grandmother and she sat there and she said, "Mother, I'm really concerned. I think I'm over my head. I don't know what I'm not raising any money. I'm going against a big incumbent." Her grandmother sat her down and she says, "I want you to do this." She said, "I want you to go get a tin can, and I want you to go out and I want you to knock on every door. And when people say that they're supporting you, ask them for a small donation. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's a nickel, a dime, a quarter, a dollar, $10,
right.
Take everything." And she said, and the reason for it, and the most important thing, is when somebody puts something into your little can, they are committing. They are betting on you. They will go out and they will vote for you. They will stand behind you. And so that's one of the things that you have to do early on in the process. You got to get people to commit to you, to make kind of it's almost like a contractual agreement that they will support you, that they'll go out and talk to their friends, that they'll go out there. So it's really important. So those little things are the ones that get you there.
Right, and then you can get a yard sign back to
Yeah,
them. And I know I agree, but you still need that mail. You need that money
You
for
need
mail.
that mail.
But here's the thing is, if you just have a smaller budget for yard signs, just do yard signs, and your happy piece, which you can use the walk piece, that's your first mailer. So your first $15,000 is right there.
Yeah.
And you can raise. If you can't raise 15,000 in a countywide race, you're not going to win. I mean,
It's very
that's a start. But that's going to help you raise money down the road too for your final mail. So really, 3 pieces of mail. So you could probably another 10 and 10. You could run a real effective race for $35,000. And some of these guys win 300.
That's about what it. That's
the minimum size.
Right. You know, if
Winnable
a
race.
supervisory race in our county is going to cost you 40,000.
But these guys spend more than that.
Oh yeah, no, they spend.
But they
in the
waste
60
a
and
lot.
90.
They waste a lot too.
That's correct. Yeah,
They on little stuff.
Yeah.
The little stuff adds up.
It adds up. You know. You start buying things for parades.
Yeah.
You start buying fans.
Too expensive fundraisers.
Yeah, you start buying fingernail clippers with your name on it.
That is.
You know, it doesn't.
Buttons. No, even shirts don't do a whole lot.
No. It's moderation, and if you're going to do that, the best way to do it is to go to one of your strong contributors and say, I'm going to be buying some shirts for my campaign staff. Would you finance that?
Well, let me show you a trick. I think on the same concept. If you print up your mail ahead of time, and you don't have the postage, you can go out to people and say, hey, for $1, I get out, 5 pieces of mail?
That's an excellent method.
I mean, print all your mail ahead of time, package it, bundle it, get it ready, because the postage is the most expensive. And you'll work hard to go get that postage.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a big believer in that. You get it done ahead of time as much as possible.
Yeah, and you go to some of your key contributors and say, listen, I'm in a
Show them the mail.
That's right. No, it works. It works.
It does. You can really, the last weeks of the campaign, you can draw a lot. Well, we know I'm a believer in mail. I think it is the most important element in a campaign. You still need a basic website, which is not expensive, and some yard signs, and a good candidate.
Right. The candidate is the most important part.
Yeah.
I mean,
and a good team among that candidate.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of things that go into winning an election, and they all play a part in it. And the key is to kind of, plan in such a way that a lot of them come together, creating momentum. And as as the election gets closer, the momentum gets greater, and those are the candidates to win. The ones
right.
And let's also not forget that walking and that knocking on doors. If you don't have that money and you can't send out that mail, there's no better way of getting to voters than face-to-face contact with them.
That is the other way, and to get volunteers to help you get out the mail. But still, you should still target that mail. You should still have it designed to make sure it gets to households where people are actually voting. That's a good point, a very good point. So in conclusion tonight, we've gone over mail, gone over the basics of a good candidate, passion. Anything else we need to cover? We haven't covered on mail. How can we get a hold of you?
Oh, you can get a hold of me.
Yeah, pull up your card there.
Yeah, here you can get a hold of me at my direct number at ABS Direct, where I work, is 209-545-6090. My cell phone is 575-1303. That's 209 again, and that will also get directly to me.
And ABS has a website on there.
Yeah,
too.
There is a website, ABS website, and it's ABS Direct Inc.
Right. And here's one of their little cards they send out to folks. So it works. Now, what areas do you cover? Do you specifically cover? Do you go all the way up to Sacramento? How far down south do you go?
We go all the way from Sacramento down to Fresno. We like working the valley. I have 30 years of voting history of voters. In Stanislaus County and these areas, so that's where we mainly focus on.
Right.
But we're set up, and our facility is fairly large, so we're able to handle any size campaign.
So the primaries are over. Now we're coming into the general elections in
That's
November,
correct.
So you're starting to plan and get ready for the.
Right. We've already got several candidates lined up. We've already bought our voter files. We're going through and we're customizing them. We're determining who the high propensity voters are, who voted in the last election, and who we expect to be at the polls.
One last question, since we're in California tonight. California just changed this last election cycle. I think was the first time they had the top two candidates go into the runoff.
Yes.
Do they have many candidates from the same party running against each other?
They did. They did.
Do they have that coming now in the general election where you got like two people from the same party?
Well, you just had a major one where you had two Democratic candidates where you had a huge amount, and they were only like 400 votes apart, and they were going to do a recount, and they were concerned that it was going to cause such a commotion within the party, and it was going to give the other party a big advantage, that finally they pulled out from the.
But it's the top two vote getters now, isn't it?
Yes.
Republican and Democrat. I mean,
right,
you could have two Democrats, two Republicans.
Right. Well, in this situation, it's an office that is generally won by the Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
The Republican candidate got the highest number of votes, but the two next Democrats were within several, because they split basically.
But the Democrat's going to win the election if it's a high propensity Democrat once they get against a Republican. But I'm thinking of cases now where when I ran here last, it was in the foothills and the mountains, and it was a Republican district. So we had 7 Republican candidates and no Democrats. So under the new rules, 2 Republicans would have been running against each other. That's
wow.
The new rules. I haven't seen that happen yet because it takes the top 2 vote getters, not my party. It'll be interesting to see how that evolves.
Yes, that'll be very interesting.
In leadership here, I saw Christina Olson
yes.
is now minority leader.
Yes.
Who from this district, from this area,
district,
and then the districts have changed around. Tom Berryhill. Who else around in the local area? Who are the top politicians in this?
Well,
area?
You have Jeff Denham, you have Kristen Olson, you have Adam Gray,
mm-hmm.
you have Kathleen.
Jared,
yeah.
And then also something strange is going on down in Fresno. Was there a write-in? How did that end up? There was some candidate. Wasn't there a write-in candidate down in Fresno in the assembly? Who got on the ballot? I don't know.
Yes.
I can cut this.
Yes.
If you need to.
Yeah. Yes. I think that there was. Oh no. Let me tell you about this one. This is an interesting one. This is a situation where you had. This is actually went against Adam Gray. He's the Democrat. He's the incumbent, and there was no one running against him. Then all of a sudden the Republicans decided that the race was winnable, so they did a write-in, and interesting enough, he didn't have to pay any of the fees that are normally paid by. He didn't have to get. He just wrote his name in. But the interesting part is once he wrote his name in, it just took a couple of votes to get him on.
So he's on the general election.
He's on the general election.
That's a different.
It was the Adam Gray camp basically had shut their doors. They figured that they had it in the bag, and they stopped their campaigning. And they were, for them it was in the bag. And then all of a sudden, at the last minute, they had a candidate, and so they had to, reignite their engines and get started again, get going. And it was that's going to be an interesting race, that turns out.
What's the numbers on that Democrat Republican?
It's a Democratic.
I guess usually more than 5-7%. It's hard to overcome that.
It's a winnable one though.
From either side.
Wow. Yeah, and so as I understand it, there's going to be a lot of money from the state coming down to the Republican candidate who's the right.
Be interesting to see how that works.
Yes, it will.
So, well, good. Balvinoa, it was good to see you. I've got to run. I'm going to actually head back over the hill tonight. Back in Central Valley, my old stomping ground for a while. It was
really good seeing you, and I'm really glad to see that you're involved in a project that you have a lot of passion in, and
it's fun to watch the campaigns from the outside.
Oh yes,
it's much more fun.
Great.
Especially as you get older. Well, thanks. Take care. We're live. We'll see this. Good night, guys. If anybody watching out there tonight, hope you had a good night. Hope we didn't hurt your dinner.